There is a very famous quote which has been attributed to Antoine de Saint-Exupéry, environmentalist David Brower, Chief Seattle, and Ralph Waldo Emerson. Whoever said it, it doesn't really matter. It's still a really good statement on which we should meditate, pray, and by which we should live our lives. The quote is, "We do not inherit the earth from our ancestors. We borrow it from our children." And that's why I invited our children to be the liturgists today when we celebrate Earth Day and recommit ourselves once again to being an Earth Care congregation and being caregivers of this beautiful planet. Dear Graham and Luke and Jackie and Lexi and Dustin and Dylan and Bridget and all the other children of our church and of the whole world, the fact is we owe it to you to take this day very seriously. God's creation is in peril, and how we act will determine how you are going to live in the future. The psalm, which was read by Jackie and Luke, Psalm 104, is a beautiful poem which speaks to the majesty of God's creation. It sings praises to God for establishing a world where all God's creatures can inhabit, can get food, and can live in abundance. It cries out in joy to God, who made an inner connecting ecosystem where all God's creation can be sustained. And we know that. One of the first Bible stories we're told as children is the creation story, where God creates the world and all that is in it, and then God calls it good. And as we remember from that creation story, humans were created with a specific role in God's creation, to be the stewards of all that God created and called good. We, God's children, are to be the caretakers of this world and are to glorify God and all that God has made as we enjoy the world's fruits. But somehow, I don't know, the meaning of that story got mixed up. Instead of being stewards who were caretakers of God's creation, we became subduers. The words dominion and subdue meant to use the world, the earth, God's creation, to our own advantage. My husband, Bo, and I were talking this week about how when we were young, litter covered the streets. Cars dirtied the snow and actually made it black just a few hours after the beautiful white snow had fallen. And you actually could smell the air some days. And of course, growing up in Cleveland, we had to live with the nation making fun of us because our river caught on fire. And although prophets have been telling us for over 100 years, we began to hear that our use and abuse of the planet put God's good creation at risk. Earth Day was established in 1970, and a growing acceptance of the responsibility to protect our planet grew. We now know that there's no such thing as just throwing something away. It goes somewhere, so we must control our waste. Think about the usage of plastic, straws, and we even try to cut down on our carbon footprint. We have learned that even small things do make a difference. Each year, to help churches bring up the topic of earth care and environmental health, an interfaith group called Creation Justice puts out material to be used when Earth Day is celebrated in worship. And each year there's different topics to be addressed: clean water, air, healthy agricultural practices have all been past topics, as have people's need to diminish their carbon footprints and the immediate and real need to stop climate change. And each year, I look at the past material and think to myself, well, we haven't solved this yet. And this year's topic is just as complicated, if not more. It is to think about justice and the fact that Black, Indigenous, and people of color are disproportionately burdened with a host of environmental injustices, including polluted air, polluted soil, community location, and unclean drinking water. The Flint, Michigan water crisis sure brought this home to all of us during the past few years. It was the Black and the poor population that was affected by the lead in the water there. They could not escape the water. They didn't have the luxury that others had of leaving the city. And as people of faith who believes in a God of justice and righteousness, who teaches us that we should love all as we love ourselves, well, this becomes a call to action. There is a residential segregation within our country which sees the concentration of people of color in disempowered neighborhoods where they are exposed to toxins. This is not news to us or a discovered concept. In fact, in 1982, there was a 6-week civil disobedience campaign where protesters actually placed their bodies in the line to prevent the dumping of carcinogenic compounds in Warren County, which had the largest population of Black people in North Carolina. And it was there that the phrase environmental racism was first coined. It's real, and it is not a part of the ethic of Christ and the God we follow. Earth care is a tough topic. It isn't just caring for the water, the air, and the soil. It is a multi-dimensional thing, and being called an earth keeper has to be a way of life. And because of that, at first, it might overwhelm us. And of course, the fear of what happens when we get overwhelmed is that we're frozen and we do nothing, or worse yet, keep the disastrous course we're now on, like people drinking champagne aboard the Titanic as it goes down. But we know that our actions can make a difference. One of the teachings that has come from the COVID pandemic was that the path we are on and the environmental crisis facing our country and our world, all of God's good creation, can be reversed. We saw that several weeks into our isolating and working from home, our planet was actually getting a little bit healthier. There's good news in this, in that things can be reversed. If that does not teach us that we individually and as a group can change the path we're on, nothing will. We do not inherit the earth from our ancestors. We borrow it from our children. When our children were baptized, we make a commitment to them to guide and nurture them with love and prayer. We make a commitment to their future and their well-being. And we love them, and we want them to have the future in God's good creation to which the psalmist sings. God made a wonderful world where we will all thrive if we just claim our role to care for it. And we can, in small but mighty ways. We owe it to all the children of our church, of the community, our country, and God's world. Amen.